Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who has joined us from across the world. So this is another really exciting session on the RAID webinar series on women in agriculture. So this is a second webinar from a three-part series, and this webinar is on seizing opportunities and gaining ground. My name is Leandra Fernandez. I'm a RAID Capacity Development Team member. I'm also doing my PhD at Griffith University and also working part-time at the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research. So I will be your host for this session, and I'm joined by some of the amazing RAID members. We've got Jess, who is the RAID Vice President, Michaela, the RAID President, and also Anam, another team member from CapDev, who will be introducing the RAID network and also helping me with the Q&A session. So to get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered here today, the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Just a few housekeeping rules. You can use the chat box to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, what you do, and what the time is at your end, because I know we've got quite a few people from different parts of the world that have joined us today. We would like the session to be as engaging as possible. So if you've got any questions at all, any burning questions, don't forget to put them in the chat box. We've got people who are going to be monitoring the chat throughout the session. And if you're unable to answer your questions at any point of time, especially during the Q&A session, we will be directing them to our speakers who will then be able to answer your questions in the chat. Also, the session is being recorded. So for today's session, we are joined by two remarkable women. We've got Dr. Bossy Boribet and Dr. Anna Okello from ACR, and I've had the pleasure of working with both of them. So Anna and Bossy have worked internationally as well as in Australia, and today they will be sort of taking us on their career journey, highlighting the challenges that they have overcome, and also the support systems that have made a difference in their life, in their careers, and the bold steps that they took to build meaningful careers. So this is an opportunity, and I'm hoping this is going to be an opportunity for us to learn from the experiences and walk away with the motivation and tools that we can use in the next steps for our own careers or our own journeys. So I'm just going to quickly check. Okay, I can share my slides, so I'm just going to quickly do that. Just give me one sec. Okay, are you able to see that? So it's awesome. So this is going to be a really busy session. And since we've already lost quite a bit of time, I'm going to try and get through this really quickly. This is just a rough agenda for today. So we will be having both the speakers present before we go into the Q&A session. So without any further ado, I would like to now pass it on to Anam, who is going to take over and introduce the RAID network.
So RAID is actually a professional network of Australian-based young researchers who are passionate for agriculture, particularly international development. And it is supported by Crawford Fund and also ACIR, which is Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research. And I think RAID was born in 2013, which is like more than a decade it has been since born. So it has a good life so far and good journey. And what's our aim is next. So our aim might be very simple, but this is very impactful, and we have learned a lot and also help support so many agriculture young people working in developing states. So what we do is we mainly aims to connect young researchers across countries in Australia and internationally, and we also connect RAID with different institutions in Australia and internationally, particularly universities. And we also try to engage professional young researchers in different platforms through virtual webinars or in-person meetings, and we also support them to build the capacity. For example, we have some masterclass courses in Malaysia, where the different researchers come together and they learn from each other. Also, they learn from our team member as well and our mentors as well. So this is all about rate in a smaller context. But if you really want to go with rate much, I think you can visit website. So I think maintaining the time, I would keep it short. Thanks. Lindra, you are muted.
Leandra, I think you're on mute.
It's, still muted, I think.
Lindra, you are muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
No, we can't hear you. Maybe Anam, would you like to introduce the first speaker? I'm not sure if you have the notes. Or we can add the introduction in the chat.
Okay. That's okay. I can just start and I'll give a brief background of myself. I'll introduce myself. Are we good to go?
Yeah, thanks, Bossy. I think that's a good plan.
Okay.
You can go first. Thanks, Bossy.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you everyone for this event, Raid, and I'm pleased to be here with my colleague. So this event on talking of women in agriculture and to seize opportunities and gaining ground, I think is what the theme is. But just as a very quick background on brief background and my career overview. So my background is agricultural biotechnology, and I attained my PhD in the same field in Queensland University of Technology. So a lot of genetic modification, plant tissue culture, etc., and diagnostics. But on top of that, I did spend most of my career working in sub-Saharan Africa with a government research organization, Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, of course, doing a lot of, collaborative partnerships with other partners across African countries and also internationally, spanning from Europe to the Americas. So in my career, I worked on improving roots and tuber crops. When we talk about that, it's about the sweet potato, cassava, banana, etc., and also one of the field crops such as cowpea. So just basically looking at crop improvement from disease diagnostics and in order to apply some interventions to improve genetic material, but not just so that it can sit in the lab, but so that we can also disseminate this to the smallholder farmers and technologies. So of importance for this is a lot about collaborative partnerships, which we did tap into this because we cannot work alone like islands, but we have to embrace each other's expertise to achieve the same goal. And I think to finalize on my introduction, I must say that I am an Australian Awards alumna. So I did receive a scholarship from the Australian government and to undertake my studies. And for that, once I became an alumni, I was very instrumental in giving back to the society and just applying some of the lessons that I had learned, back into agriculture to benefit smallholder farmers. So that's a bit about me. So noting that this is something on women, so why the women involvement, and their role in agriculture? In most developing countries, I need to say that across sub-Saharan Africa, etc., the buck stops with women. On matters nutrition at the household level, on matters, you'll find women running up and down, they have a small veggie patch at the back of their household where they can quickly run, pluck some vegetables and, prepare dinner every day. These women bear the brunt when it comes to feeding their families and also harvesting crops when they have children on their backs, because multitasking, I'm pretty sure this is something that you may have come across in developing countries. But at the same time, when that is happening, some men are either grazing, okay, or have been observed to just catch up with their mates in the nearest shopping center, you know, playing some card games or that. Anyway, for that reason, I targeted women farmers, and also because the crops that I was working on were predominantly about sweet potato, banana, you know, and some vegetables. Because these were women crops, it was so easy to really target these women and, you know, come and work closely with them. A good example is with sweet potato. It can be harvested in piecemeal, as in you don't have to remove all the tubers at the same time, just once for a meal, and that is it. And also because sweet potato is quite resilient during different times because it withstands different seasons, so it was a very reliable crop. Banana as well is another crop that can be used as a weaning crop, as in very instrumental when it comes to transitioning to solid food in children. And also banana is also used for dowry. So these are some of the crops that we were working on that were really women, you know, oriented. So just a bit about my entry into the agriculture sector. It's quite funny because I really didn't know how to get into this sector. But when I was young and growing up in year 5 or year 6, we call them standard 5 and standard 6, I used to see my dad collect some sick potatoes and sick tomatoes from our veggie patch. And he would sample them and slice them. And then I'd wonder why the hell are we having such kind of tomatoes in the kitchen, and wondering whether we're having them for dinner. But he was actually just slicing them, sampling them so that he can use these to look under the microscope and determine the disease or what is, you know, happening to them, because he was a bacteriologist then. And because at that time he used to go to school until about lunch hour, so he used to pick me, and I used to see the same tomatoes that he had sampled that were on his bench. And I used to visit his lab and he used to identify what the actual problem was under a microscope. And for me, this just fascinated me and said, how is it that you're bringing in sick tomatoes and looking at them under a microscope? So that alone, that experience really intrigued me, and that is where my career journey began. So it was inspired by my dad, who was a scientist, especially in you know, bacteriology, etc. at the time. So well, this doesn't come easy. There are a few milestones, there are a few turning points, and for me, having completed several degrees spanning from foods and nutrition into biology, into biotechnology, into bioinformatics, one turning point is when I veered off from foods and nutrition, because my first degree was foods and nutrition. And then I veered off that because then biology was my minor. But I then followed my interest and followed my passion into study life, you know, biology. And after the studies that I had attained, I held roles at the crop biotechnology program coordination at the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. And one other thing is, another turning point is the coming to be in Australia. One, for studies, and after that, I relocated back to come and join my family. So one thing that really hit me hard was, having worked in the country, the developing world, for 20 years, I had established my work, I had my projects, I had my networks, name it, and I knew how to navigate the system. Here I am relocating to Australia and resigning and starting afresh. For me, that was a number one thing that I needed to navigate myself, to start afresh, begin new networks, begin working in Australia, begin tapping into my networks. And the people that I had to tap in were those that I worked closely with when I did my PhD. And with time, I joined the Department of Agriculture, working on negotiating trade and market access and looking at Australian commodities to several markets in Europe and the Americas. And at the same time, you know, working in capacity development within the Indo-Pacific. So it doesn't come easy, as I said, but I appreciate the beauty of support systems. A couple of women and men have held my hands and opened some doors for me. These are women who saw the potential in me and they provided opportunities. Also, other women who are external points of contacts, which I tapped into that I knew when I was working in Kenya, right? So a few of them. But please note, not all women or all peers that you know can be support systems. I'm pretty sure you can tell you can tell that apart. The other support system is my university supervisors, my professors, who knew what it actually is. They believed in me, and I took the first step, leap of faith, to be able to do this work under their guidance, and I believed in myself as well. But against all that, most of all, I just need to say that the ultimate support was my family, both immediate and extended, my husband and the children, who knew that mom needed to be at the lab at this time. Mom needed to, to do a few things here and then. They were quite understanding, and my siblings who cheered me on. Major challenges, having worked in a developing country. Infrastructural challenges. Here we just flick the light on. Some places there's no light, there's no generator, you have to improvise. I had to get consumables and reagents using my own money, sometimes pick a small soft loan, because I knew that this work is for me. Keep the receipts, and then I would be able to get reimbursed for that money. So this all about being flexible and understanding the context in which that you're working on. I was also dealing with a society that was predominantly, decisions were made by men who sometimes could not understand or appreciate the joy and the value of what women bring, but this called for having a conversation and getting to know each other and having candid conversation. But at the end of it is to learn how to pick your battles. So I just want to say here, I think I'm over and done with time, but I don't know, maybe some things I'll be able to say when I am answering questions. But most importantly, make the most of opportunities that you get. Number two, you have to be in it to win it. Because if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get it. Number three, believe in yourself. All right. Finally, volunteering. Learn how to just take up some jobs and volunteer. All right. So which is quite fine. And tap into your networks. I love to attend conferences and networking events. This is a fantastic opportunity to get to know someone. At least each event you go, come out with 3 names that you know and have a classic email that you can, reach out to them. Thank you so much. I hope I have been of help and offered you some tips and tactics of how to, navigate this working in research for agricultural development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bossy. Sorry, I was able to rejoin. Sorry, guys, I'm having a lot of technical issues today. Teams does not seem to like me. But such an inspiring journey. I missed the first part of it, but I was able to join in for the second part. Amazing. Thank you so much, Bossy. I'd now like to introduce the second speaker. So we will leave the Q&A session for later. So our second speaker today is the wonderful Anna Okello. Anna is a dynamic leader who's had a diverse background in vet science, international development, and public health. So since graduating from the University of Melbourne, Anna has worked extensively across Africa and Southeast Asia in livestock development and One Health. And she's held roles with organizations like the WHO, University of Edinburgh, Department of Agriculture, and ACR. She joined ACR in 2017 as the Associate Research Program Manager for One Health and is now the Research Program Manager for Livestock Systems. She also holds a PhD in political science. So please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Anna Okello. Anna, did you want me to share the slides from my end?
If that's possible, we've got them here, but we have to upload them. So see how you go.
Okay.
But
I'm gonna give this a go, and hopefully Teams does not kick me out again. Let's see how we go with that.
So I can also just talk. No problem. All right, I might get going. So hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. So following on, a lot of what Bossy has said. sort of resonates with my career as well. Next slide, Leandra. And I just thought, first of all, I'll just quickly step through some of the work that I've been doing, because I haven't actually worked in agriculture. Probably the most work in agriculture and food systems work has been since I joined ACR in 2017. I started off as graduated as a vet and worked in New Zealand for a couple of years. And then when we talk about seizing opportunities and bold steps taken, I left New Zealand 20 years ago now and moved to Morocco in North Africa. And I worked as a volunteer vet in an NGO for over 1 year in Morocco and also Mali in West Africa. And that was really the start of my journey. I was meant to go for 6 months and then go back to my job in New Zealand, and I didn't go back didn't come back to this part of the world for over 10 years. So you can see how, following the path that you're presented with is quite interesting sometimes. After the volunteer opportunity, I worked with NGOs for a couple of years. Ethiopia, Kenya, Pakistan and India were the main countries, as well as Egypt. Worked as an equine vet predominantly. So as we know, in systems that we work in these countries, the horses and the donkeys and the mules are often the forgotten livestock group. Ethiopia's GDP is brought upon on the back of horses. So, I was always a big advocate for these animals. Plus, I became a vet because I love horses. I've always had horses and was going to be an equine vet originally. So this is sort of the path that it took. And then I started my PhD in University of Edinburgh after a couple of years in the NGO sector. And the next slide will tell you why I did that. We moved to Laos from Kenya in 2012, where that was my first exposure to ACR. I was managing an ACR One Health project managed through ACDP. That I hadn't heard of ACR. I'd been, quite a few years in the development space and never heard of ACR. So it was interesting, coming to Asia after being in Africa and seeing, the role that ACR is playing in that region. So that's just a bit of a quick whip through. Leandra, if you want to put the next slide on. So I think in terms of gaining ground and seizing opportunities and being bold and transformative, even in food system research, we're all hearing that you need to be bold, you need to be transformative. We can't do the same for the next 50 years that we've done for the last 50 to 70 in the Green Revolution. And I guess sitting in ACR, but also throughout my career, very importantly, I did my PhD in political science. So I did a 180 flip of my brain into how the world works and thinking of what constitutes evidence from a policy perspective as opposed to evidence from an academic perspective. I started as a natural scientist and I moved through that sort of transition myself, I guess, thinking around evidence and who needs what information. And it's been really important in my programming role at ACR to really keep that sun in the middle at the centre. I think we can't gain ground and we can't seize opportunities if we don't know how the system works. It's not even about the science a lot of the time. So science is good. Good science is really important. Understanding scientific discourse and narratives, but you have to couch that science in those other two circles, which formed the basis of my political science PhD, actually, was thinking around how does the science fit with international development actor networks, and really importantly, the politics and the interests, and what we call the political economy of the countries and contexts we're working in. And I always go back to the French. So really interesting, the French have the same word for policy and politics. English separates those words out, and I always think of the French side when I start thinking around this stuff, because honestly, you can't separate those two out. So our role in international ag research is to really represent and advocate, and really importantly, generate enthusiasm. And if I've done one thing at ACR, hopefully I've done that, for the contribution of complex science, but framing it in that sort of political economy narrative. Otherwise, there's no impact, right? If your next and end users don't see the point of what you're doing, you won't get there. So I'm showing 3 photos, and that will be the end of my presentation. This is me in Morocco 20 years ago as a very young vet. Leandra, if you want to click again, the next animation should come. So the issue I had with the NGO sector all those years ago, and things have changed in the last 20 years, but I felt like there was never enough critical analysis being brought to the interventions that we were doing. We were treating these animals and doing good work, but really what was the end game for it? So I started my PhD at Edinburgh. I'd been doing a master's at the time and moved into a PhD program in political science, but looking at policy development processes at the time around that emerging One Health idea in the late 2000s after avian influenza. How do you jointly make policy across ministries of health and agriculture? That was my key research question. This photo was taken by the BBC, and you can see I'm not actually doing a lot of work there because the microscope's around the wrong way. But I feel that part of the work, and I was working with animal health, veterinary teams, public health teams, I felt like it was very extractive, the work that we were doing. We were doing a lot of surveillance, we were doing a lot of focus group discussions and these sorts of things. And I just sort of felt surely there's another path. And so this is where I love this space of agriculture research for development. I always tell anyone that says, what do we do? Our role at ACR and others, the CGIAR, is to bring that critical analysis into those development programs. And that's the role of research, but by itself, it's not enough. So the third photo, Leandra. So this is last year at Beef Week. You can see we were with Minister Watt from Agriculture. We took a team from the Pacific across to Beef Week. Here are some of them here. And I just think this photo sums up nicely that journey that I've been on from sort of a younger person working in the NGO sector to really realising the reality that the space we work in is often, policy and politics, and working with the broad range of actor networks. It's really important for us to understand this space. So I'll always advocate for, yes, the science is excellent. I don't have a question with, the science that we do or the science that we fund at ACR, but it's got to be couched in that sort of political economy diagram. So I think I might have one more slide, Leandra. So just some of these opportunities, I guess, bold steps taken, obviously personally, I've moved around a lot. We've done lots of different things. But I think as an agency, and I think as those of you working in international agricultural research for development, we've got to put our money where our mouth is in terms of really what are those bold, innovative, transformative approaches for food systems. We talk a lot about it, but I do a lot of work at ACR in the space over the last couple of years of things that have not been necessarily supported at ACR, and we have to advocate for new ways of doing things. I didn't want to come in to the livestock program and just do what we'd always been doing, because I feel like, the livestock technical stuff is not the issue. It's the systems, it's the sectors that livestock are functioning in that are often misunderstood, and that's where the research goes. And maybe that's my background in policy and governance, but we really wanted to sort of shake the trees a little bit with livestock, and I feel like we've got now, 8 years later, some really interesting programs of work. Black soldier fly work in Kenya and now expanded to the Pacific. We started not-for-profit in Vanuatu that's really placing regenerative agriculture and regenerative agritourism at the centre of everything that the Vanuatu tourism sector is doing. We're working with a venture capital studio in Ghana. Like, I think there's just lots of different things that we should be exploring as donors as well to try and move some of these systems forward. We always have to think what's the comparative advantage, and in terms of support systems, like, I don't know, I'm thinking my PhD supervisors were fundamental in me not necessarily getting good technical thinking, but there's just that support system and building my confidence, especially in the space of research. And like Bossy said, my family, like many of you may know my husband, and he's also got his own research career and stuff, but he's done the bulk of the work at home the last 8 years when I've been sort of traveling all over the place and doing this role. So I'll finish off there. I also want to say that this is actually my last day at ACR. I wanted to show this photo because this is Pakistan more than 10 years after I'd first worked there, and it's just funny swings and roundabouts, particularly in agriculture. Never burn your bridges, because you'll always start seeing the same people again. And it's just funny. I'm often working with people that I haven't, I met a researcher in Morocco a couple of weeks ago that we did our PhDs together, back under the EU program, in 2008. I hadn't seen her since then. So thank you so much. I'm moving on, but I'm staying in international agricultural research. So you will see in a while where I appear. But yeah, good luck with all of your journeys. It's a really fun one to be on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was, again, really, really inspiring. So we'll move on to the Q&A session now. We've got quite a few questions coming in, but I'd like Anna to get started with it, and I'm just going to go through some of the questions in the chat and see what we have here.
Thanks, Leandra. Thanks, Anna. It was wonderful talk, and I liked your last picture because the girl standing behind you, it's me. Thank you so much.
I was going to say, Anna, hello. I haven't seen you for a while.
I'm good. So I think the first question I would like to ask from both of you is, because you have worked internationally in developing countries and also in Australia, and there could be different challenges I know infrastructure is a challenge, which Bossy also mentioned, but do you think any particular challenge which women could face in developing situations and how you could navigate these challenges?
I think the first thing is to recognize that different places have different cultures, backgrounds, way of doing things. You can bring in the information you've got or the technical knowledge, but needed to tweak that to suit the context of where you are. I think for me, that is one way you can, navigate and ask around and say, well, where I come from, this is how we do it. How do you do it here? And use that information to sort of make it work for you and navigate, whatever challenges. I don't know whether I answered. Yeah. Did I answer you right? Was that the question?
Yes, yes. And do you have any comments, because you work in different countries like developed and developing? So is there any challenges you think women could face?
To be perfectly honest, I think the challenges that women face are a little bit universal and don't necessarily, I mean, like Bossy said, it's really, really important that if we're going in as outsiders into a community, we really understand. And what you see on the surface, as we all know, is not necessarily what happens behind closed doors. And we always have to make sure that the interventions and the things that we're doing is not actually doing more harm to women. And I think that's a deeper question than often people give it credit to. But I mean, I think basic things: how do you manage work-life balance? How do you manage your personal life? I think the thing for women lead very differently to the way men lead. And I think acknowledging that, as particularly when most of the industries we're working in, the ministries, they are still quite male-dominated. And it doesn't matter that women have the positions or whatever, is still that sort of mentality overriding that leadership sort of culture, which is really interesting, I think, from a woman to sort of try and challenge that or at least work with it. The other thing, the concept of imposter syndrome and overcompensation that women do the world over, because we always think we're not good enough. We always think we don't deserve to be there. And I think back to even 2017 when I joined ACR, honestly speaking, so many people in the agency asked me how I'm going to do my job because I've got young kids. I was the third female in almost 40 years to be an RPM at ACR. And even from that, coming into an organisation, and they meant well, they weren't being mean, but that clicked in my brain. It's like, how am I going to do this job when my kids are 5 and 2? They're 10 and 13 now, and a lot of water under the bridge. But it's still, I think, there's certain things that we have to face, women the world over, that aren't any different compared to where you are.
Yeah.
Such a fantastic answer, Anna. You practically answered the next question that we were going to ask you. So I guess the next question is, we often hear about moments when you have to try and create opportunities for yourself in order to get somewhere. So did either of you face such a situation where you had to create your own opportunities rather than wait for one? And if yes, how did you go about with that?
Yeah, thanks, Leandra. That's quite important. And I think I must have covered something like that. A very good example is volunteering. Put up your hand if you know that there's something coming up and they have all structures in place, but there's something missing and there's a gap. Just put up your hand and say, hey, I'm here and I'm happy to do that. Because I remember the first time we had a very big AU summit, and one of the project, the organizers did not have someone to take minutes. Do you know, I put up my hand, went in there, took minutes that were part of the, the proceedings. And anytime I'm taking minutes, I'm just walking up and about and, mingling with other people and people asking, who is this person? Who is this lady who's just walking up and about? So that is one way of creating your own opportunities and just raising your own visibility, because no one is going to do that for you unless you stand up and do it on your own, right? So for me, that is something that I really take very seriously, because then after that, it really opened doors for me. Because they said, oh, this lady who was writing minutes, who formed the proceedings, we're going to have her again. She can do, this job again and again.
Amazing. Thank you, Bossy.
It's
Anna?
really amazing.
I think the same. I mean, I love that sentiment. Picture, no one's going to open doors for you.
Ah, no.
Absolutely not. And
No.
particularly as women. So
Yeah.
open your own doors
Yeah.
and walk through it.
And I think this is very inspiration for me. Like sometimes I get reluctant. I thought no, might be I'm not better suited here, but I think boss is right. Trust myself. Like
Do it.
just don't know. Trust.
You deserve to be there as much as the next person.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think should I go with the next question, Indra, if we have time? Yes. I think so. So as you mentioned that having a support system and good mentor is really, really a blessing.
Mhm.
And in your case, you said like supervisor and some people who mentor you to guide you throughout the way. Do you have any recommendation how we can identify the good mentor? Because there are so many people around us and we can say, oh, this could be our mentor, but might be this is not the case. So how we can critically see for our mentor?
Other than supervisors, I think if you can be able to see whether you can connect to them in the first instance. For me, when I look at, okay, it's funny, but this is who I am. Like body language, for example. You meet someone for the first time and they're not smiling. Are you really going to approach them? Body language, a smile. You've seen someone who has presented something and they have finished their slide presentation with the last slide of their name and email and how to get them. Write that email. You can see for someone to put their details out there means that someone is actually ready to have a conversation with someone, mentors. At work, for example, there are so many people here, but picking the right person, listening to what they say, how they speak, and if that resonates with you and you can attest to what they say, that right there is a green flag, as a potential mentor stroke mentee. There's just a few things, here and there. And even reading articles, etc., reach out. What is the worst that can happen? Nothing. Just reach out.
Love that advice, Bossy. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Thank
Stand
you.
by it as well. It's something I know. So Bossy's been my mentor for quite a few years, and she's always pushed that, and she's made me. I'd say I am where I am because of her. So thank you, Anna.
Not so much more to add. I think, mentors have to be wanting to do it too. And I think it's a personality thing. Sometimes not everyone is going to be a great mentor, even if they're the best scientist, right? So really finding people that have it within them to open doors rather than shut them for the people just beneath you, right? Or, people that are coming into this space. And I really, again, from a leadership perspective, I sometimes don't understand leaders that want to push out people that have enthusiasm, have commitment, have capacity and capability. Like if there's one thing I've done in the Livestock program, I've really ensured that my project leaders are amazing people, and individually and the teams that they create are all just, they'll lift us all up together, right? So as a mentor, you need to have that sort of, don't be, feel threatened by people, I guess. Like everyone gets lifted up together when you have that sort of positive culture and those sorts of more aspects of women's leadership as well. But it's hard to find. I mean, personally, I wouldn't say I've ever really had a good mentor. As I said before, my PhD supervisors were great, but in building my confidence. But yeah, it'd be nice to actually someone wants to mentor me, like reach out, because I find it's hard. And amongst all the other work that everyone's doing, like everyone is just so busy, it really says something to people like Bossy that actually take the time to mentor someone else coming up through the system.
Anna, I've heard quite a few great things from quite a few people at ACR about you and how you've made a difference in their lives as well. Just wanted to put that out there. I think we've got time for one more question. So we've got a question in the chat. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for women in global agriculture today?
Wow. Okay. Biggest opportunity for women in global agriculture. I think women have inherent characteristics and for what they bring. Other than agriculture, there's that, as Anna had mentioned, this compassion, you know, bringing in compassion in what they do. Women generally have that caring heart, holding other people's hands. So for me, I think if women would hold other people's hands, then we would create a culture or a society where they're willing to, you know, disseminate knowledge, information, and the trend keeps going on. Also, having the unique ways of tapping into gaps. For example, right now we are dealing with climate change. You know, before climate change was a buzzword, I want to believe it was there from during our forefathers. Women knew that it's going to rain in the next 2 days, and they knew what to do with their crop, or they knew what to do with the chooks, you know, on the ground. And tapping that information so that you can use that to help in the modern, you know, to inform the climate innovation approaches and interventions is really, you know, very important. So I think that's what, you know, I can say. But again, women, we also need to speak to ourselves and say we've got to be in there to be in it. There's some women who have 8 out of 10 selection criteria. They are 8 out of 10. They will not apply for the job because they don't have 10 out of 10. No. When you find a man has 3 out of 10, he will still apply for the job. So why can't we apply? What is wrong with us?
Here's the data.
I finished.
Love it, Bobby. Yeah, we often have those conversations about that. Like, I think that's where the imposter syndrome sometimes comes to play as well.
Yeah, don't doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself. You know what you're doing. Even now, we know what we are doing.
And maybe I'll be a little bit more facetious in answering that question, and that the reality is, at least in global agriculture and food systems research, nobody knows what we're going to do, right? Like, you know, this climate change and all the challenges that we're facing, both environmentally, socially, politically, there isn't a rule book for it, right? And this is where I was mentioning before, you've got to be bold, you've got to be transformative, you've got to put your money where your mouth is and really try and be the change you want to see in the world. And I've always believed that. But, you know, there's no rule book. So what is the biggest opportunity for women in the space that we're currently working in is that the old stuff, you know, needs to be innovated. And as Bossy said, all those qualities that we bring as women, inherently understanding how to look after people, how systems work, how to feed our families. You know, I think that's the biggest opportunity we've got. We don't know what the next steps are and what to do about it. And it's up to us to innovate and be bold and transformative in the work that we do.
Beautiful, beautiful answers. There's one last question here. I know we are past, it's past 6 o'clock, but we did start late. Do you feel that exemplifying feminine leadership traits help to bring male leaders along on the journey and lift the whole culture of an organization?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I guess I haven't thought of it outside, like the Australian experience, or, you know, the Australian and New Zealand experience, where it's still not really, you know, a lot of the time it's difficult to be accepted even in our own institutions here, right? So I think with time, yes, and I think, you know, and it's that whole thing, it's about bringing everyone along together. And every time we say in gender, it's not just about working with women, you know, you've got to work with the men as well. And I think that's the same for institutional leadership. I think where you've got strong male leaders who are open to some of these different ways of doing things, particularly if they start seeing the results and it reflects well on them, you know, you don't have as many issues. But taking those first steps and really just bringing, I've just read Jacinta Ardern's autobiography, right? And the whole thing she talks about leadership with kindness, and it really resonated. And we've all seen how she did her role, right? And how different it was from some of her strong male counterparts at the time. And I think that's a really, you know, I think let's see what happens with this leadership with kindness and whether it is respected. I feel we're not quite there yet, even in Australia, right? So, Yeah, interesting
Yeah.
space. You can do it in your own sphere of influence,
Yeah.
and I've tried to do that as the program manager here, but whether that resonates higher up,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anna. I just need to add, and look, we have a long way to go. But in some cultures, in the developing countries, where there's a lot of dominated by the male, patriarchal society, let me tell you, it is so easy because you will just go and target the male, all right? And include them so that they feel they're part of the decision making.
They made the decision.
Yes, the women made the decision, but you include the men. They massage the ego. Well, I don't know how to, for lack of better language, I'm sorry, but I'm talking about the developing world. When the men feel they are included, they'll be like, oh, yes, 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 I want to endorse that. And after that endorsement, actually the woman benefits.
Yeah.
And in that way, you get to have the woman being included, in the whole thing, right? So we need to know where to press those buttons, how hard to press them, and when to press them, right? The other thing I have seen, there's a lot of, like in our development policy, we've been talking about having gender as an outcome, in the work that we do. So it's about being intentional and deliberate and saying, for this work, I am targeting gender. For example, why would I come with an innovative technology that is going to make the woman bend the whole evening, or have a machine that will thresh maize and she has a baby in the back and it's going to, give her problems? No. So we need to look for ways of addressing women drudgery and making things work for her, not her to try and fit in to the system. Try and make a system that works for her so that it can make her life easy, to feed her families. There's no need of coming with innovation technologies of irrigation in places where, the women are not allowed to lift their legs up, but this machine is coming that you have to lift your leg. What are you doing to the woman? So it's just little small tweaks that we have to be deliberate and intentional. Otherwise, we are not here to just tick boxes. We are here to actually walk the talk, in my view. Thank you, Leandra.
Beautiful, beautiful, Bossy and Anna. Totally agree. I think with that, we could end today's session. So I would just like to thank everybody for joining us today, even though we had quite a few technical issues. You stayed back, you didn't leave, and that means a lot. So this series, like Women in Agriculture, as you can see, we've had two amazing speakers today, Anna and Bossy, who've done such fantastic work during their careers and their personal life in Australia as well as internationally. It's women like that who kind of inspired the RAID network. And that's how the series was born, to better understand and celebrate the role of women in agriculture, as well as around the world. And we want to use conversations like this as a source of inspiration and also to encourage young researchers, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been working in the space for some time. And the speakers, both Anna and Bossy, have done just that. So a big thank you to both of you. And I'm sure you've inspired many, many young minds, many young and early career researchers today. You've certainly inspired me.
Thanks.
That's okay. Thanks.
So thank you so much. I would also like to thank Anam and Michaela, Jess, Bridget, all of you for helping out at the start of the session to make it happen, and also the RAID network for making the series as well as the session a success. Finally, we do have another session that's going to be happening as part of the series. So that's going to be sometime next month. And don't forget to keep an eye out on our social media channels and also the RAID website for this announcement. And we hope to see you there for this final session. Thank you so much. I know I've turned off my camera. It was interrupting with the bandwidth, and we had a rainy day today, so that hasn't helped either with the technical issues. So, but I'd like to turn it on now. And thank you, everybody. It's been great having you. Once
Thanks,
again, thank you,
Leandra.
Anna and Bossy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're
I'll see you.
welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye-bye.
Anna Bossy. Bye.
All
Bye,
right.
Anna.
Bye. Bye.
Good
bye,
to see
bye,
you
Anna.
again.
Good to see you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.